Welcome back to a super big card review for Violet Hold. I'm going to try to go a little faster today because we just have so many freaking cards across Death Knight, Hunter, and Paladin. And you guys say I always look like a UPS worker when I wear this combo, so I'm delivering a big old package. No, that doesn't sound right. Let's jump into some Death Knight cards here with Emergency Surgery, a new 5-mana spell. Blood, Unholy Runes, choose an enemy minion, and then summon 3/1/1 undead with life steal that attack it. So this is kind of a removal card, right? Where you clear something like up to 9 health, basically. So kind of single target removal, but also, you know, heals you up to 9 health as well. Alternatively, if you use this on something smaller, you might have kind of a leftover 3/1 on board as well, which this is like kind of expensive, I think, for single target removal, right? It feels like there's going to be some awkward board states where, you know, you're just leaving behind a couple 3/1s because there's like 3/3/1s on board, and those 3/1s feel like they're just sitting there passively sitting ducks, basically, and they get swept up really easily, and maybe they don't actually heal you. Or sometimes, you know, it's like one big dude, but there's still 3 or 4 little dudes left behind, and it's like, man, this just felt like a really big expense, I think, for a card that didn't really solve all my problems. In other words, this is sort of so singular in its direction. I wonder how often it's going to feel worth it. Like, does the lifesteal aspect of this feel worth it? Another thing to consider is, like, we're going to see a blood card later, double blood, that wants to spend corpses. Like, do blood decks just need some ways to generate bodies? Like, you know, 3 bodies here is fine. But I just wish this did a little more. I don't know. I wish it was almost a hair cheaper. I wish they were like 3/2s or something, so when they're left behind, they aren't swept up so easily. Some kind of boost on this, I think, would help. Right now, this just feels safe and honest, and I don't know if that's going to make it feel competitive. I can imagine Death Knight just having access to better single target options that have, you know, still some life gain, that are maybe a little bit more cheap or flexible. In fact, we're going to see another card in this video I think is just way more cheap and flexible, that's not exactly the same, but maybe sort of solves similar kinds of problems in a weird way. In fact, here, let's just do it now. This is Drink Blood, a new 2-mana single blood rune shadow spell. It's got lifesteal and deal 3 damage to a minion, and then refresh your hero power. So this is just a flexible way to solve a little minion on board and still get a little life gain, right? Obviously, it's not 9 health, it's only 3, but it's also only 2 mana. It just feels like I'd rather have a handful of cards like this and weave these throughout my turns, solving little problems here and there, as opposed to having to commit that big 5-mana line. Like, I don't know, that just feels a little too all in for a game plan that's not super successful. Now, this one has this bonus here of refreshing your hero power, which under normal circumstances with a normal Death Knight hero power, I would be like, nah, I don't really think that's useful. I don't want to spend another 2 mana just to summon a 1/1 charger. Like, that's not that great. But do remember, we saw the legendary very, very early on in this set, Blood Doctor Thelina here, that gets you a second hero power that costs corpses. So you get a Vampire's Kiss, and suddenly, right, like this one is refreshed. Now you get to use this twice for potentially +6 attack in a given turn. So you could also now use that in combination with your base hero power, where you like hero power to get your 1/1, you spend 2 mana for your Drink Blood, clear up something, whatever, you know, and then well, Vampire's Kiss first on your 1/1, excuse me, and then Drink Blood, and then Vampire's Kiss again, and you have kind of a 7 damage charger that also you know, can go face, could be a trade-in. So it's like you've actually sort of pieced together a turn that starts to look a little bit like your last turn, where you have, you know, maybe multiple guys that can trade in, but you have more flexibility baked into this card in general. Now, that also does call into question that corpse consideration again, because if you're using Vampire's Kiss, you need corpses, you need bodies. Maybe the last card is a good way to get bodies, but again, 5 mana for 3 corpses does not feel like an efficient rate of return. I just don't think that's going to be worth it. And how long and late are you going into this game to play all these expensive cards and utilize this hero power enough. It just feels like all of it needs to be cranked up a little bit when it comes to speed or impact. Now, that said, I think Drinkblood's just like generally fine. I think these 2 mana deal 3 cards like this have been just absolutely okay to weave into control decks. You know, they're just good early removal. They keep you occupied. They keep your health full. Like, that's great for blood style decks, control style decks. So I think it's actually a good card just in its own right, where maybe occasionally the hero power thing's relevant, whether you're running Thelina or not. You know, it's just a fine little extra bonus on top of a card you might play anyway. But then, does it actually like support this archetype? Does it create something there? I don't think it pushes that other stuff into relevance. I don't know. That just seems shaky to me. Moving on to Bone Flurry here, another 2 mana spell. Unholy Rune this time. Deal 3 damage randomly split among enemies, so an arcane missiles at a base. But then if a friendly minion died this turn, deal 3 more, which I like this. I think this is a nice 6 damage line. We've seen these kind of 2 mana deal 6 arcane missiles work a few times in the past. I think this is another example where it could work great. And for a Death Knight deck that has access to a hero power that can very easily activate this, or if you're playing like an Unholy Swarm deck, you can have a bunch of stuff on board to very easily activate this. I don't think it's hard to get this trigger off at all, which means dealing 6 is great. And I think very often if you're an aggressive Death Knight deck and you got a wide board of stuff, Reborns, Death Rattles, sticky things like that on board, this is often going to be 2 mana deal 6 to face, because this can go face, right? So I think this could be a finisher of sorts for an aggressive board-based undead Death Knight sort of plan, which makes this card really strong. I think this is actually great. Sometimes in a pinch, you'll use it for removal. Sometimes it'll just slam people in the face. And in both cases, it has some utility. Just looks good. Moving on to Corpse Cannon, a new 2 mana weapon. Double Unholy Rune. It's a 1/3, and it reads, after your hero attacks, summon a 1/1 Frail Ghoul, which the Frail Ghoul is your hero power guy with charge. It's a little weird to me this doesn't say Frail Ghoul with charge. I guess since it's just a part of the default base Death Knight set, they're kind of assuming you know, but it should be that dude anyway. So it's kind of like a 2/3 weapon here, right? But with some flexibility in how those attacks resolve. Also just a great corpse generator, of course, giving you 3 bodies and 3 corpses over the 3 attacks of this 3 durability. So I think this is actually just a really nice tool for that kind of board-based swarmy style Death Knight deck, which Unholy Runes do play towards really well. Good corpse generator, good flexibility on a weapon early, just face damage sometimes. This could also help you generate bodies for a Vampire's Kiss deck, although is Thelina, shoot, what's her rune alignment? Can you run this and Thelina now that I say that? Surely you can. Surely they wouldn't. Yeah, you can. Okay, you can go double Unholy, single blood, and you know, maybe use this as a cheap way to preemptively load up a body to get buffed there. So Thelina, you know, I think does have some angles actually still in these swarmier double Unholy decks that maybe not every card in the package wants to be in, like, you don't want to include. I don't think Emergency Surgery goes in there, right? Like, I want it to be more swarmy, less about life gain and removal, more about pressure and just raw damage output. But maybe there's some build that's like a little bit more mid to late gamey, and it's like, I'm just gonna wait and then blow up and just start hammering you with all these crazy corpses, crazy charge minions or whatever. That feels less reliable to me than just going from moment 1. And I think this card still works well going for moment 1. So I like this. I think Thelina maybe makes sense here. But again, Thelina is a 5-cost card that you'd be playing in an aggro deck. It's kind of irrelevant. We've already talked about Thelina, but I just think this card still works well. So next up is Tower of Ghouls, a new 4-mana 2/7 undead. After this minion takes damage, summon 2 1/1 Frail Ghouls. Now, I want to remind you again, I should have showed you this earlier, but the Frail Ghoul reads, at the end of your turn, this minion dies, which is important. It's not just at the end of any turn, because otherwise, if your opponent traded into your Tower of Ghouls, they just hit end turn and your ghouls would die. But they actually stick around through your turn. So this is actually relevant when this takes damage. If the opponent traded in a bunch of 1/1s on this, you'd get a board full of Frail Ghouls that could still attack next turn, which would be kind of perfect, right? Because you'd be generating a bunch of corpses and just have a bunch of damage flexibility. Maybe go face, maybe trade in, etc. So this becomes this kind of a weird problem to solve for the opponent, where this 7 health, if they don't deal with it efficiently in sort of one fell swoop, it could be this big corpse generator for you, and actually kind of this like aggression generator where you just bounce off of this and keep generating ghouls that can go face just a little bit at a time, whittling down. I think the question then becomes like, is this 2/7 stat line enough at a base to make it a threat that the opponent has to solve? Because what they might just do is like leave this on board, and they're like, oh yeah, I don't have to deal with that right now. And then it feels like you're kind of forced to trade in with it to start getting your ghouls, and that might feel like a less efficient line where 2 damage isn't enough. But then you do have like maybe some ways to buff the attack on this, Vampire's Kiss or otherwise, and it's like, well, maybe I can turn it into a threat, and then they have to solve the problem. It does become this sort of high friction card. I do still think an aggressive deck might feel like this is too big of a commitment with an unreliable payoff, and they might just want to go wider and swarmier than this card, because this is a wider, swarmier card, but it's on a delay, right? It's kind of going to take time to do that, and it might even take a few turns to get your value out of this. So I don't know if this goes into every fast, swarmy Death Knight deck, if this makes the sense in a Thelina deck. I think it's okay, though. I think it's fine. Moving on to Sawbones. This is a 6-mana, 6/4 prepare card with a pretty crazy battle cry. Destroy all your other minions, draw a card, and refresh a mana for each one destroyed, which like potentially that's, you know, 6 other minions on board if you have a full board, which is kind of nuts, right? Like drawing 6 cards off of this is crazy. This could also cost 0, so you can actually like play out a board of stuff with it and then immediately wipe that board of stuff, get all of your mana back essentially to restart your turn, and also get a full hand back as well, which is crazy, right? Like you can just like prepare this at any given moment, set it to 0, you're on turn 6 or whatever, play out 6 1-cost cards, or maybe dudes that generate whatever, summon stuff on board, and then just like take a whole turn and just reset your hand. And then like maybe those are death rattle minions and stuff too, where you're activating useful death rattles and so on. There's like some spicy stuff possible with this. I'm gonna be honest, I don't know what that looks like yet, like what deck you've built this around. Like, is it maybe just Frail Ghouls? Because Frail Ghouls are fine to destroy as well. Is it death rattle stuff? What's the angle here, right? But it's just doing a lot that I think it's gonna get solved, and somebody's gonna figure out a way to make this really cool and really powerful. Maybe even kind of broken feeling, where it just creates so much stuff or does so much in a single card that it's hard not to be broken, right? Because you're talking about it's basically mana on mana with the prepare and the refresh. It's death rattle activation. It's insane card draw. It's just doing a lot. So I think this card's actually super high potential. I think somebody's going to figure out a way to make this one super cool and super strong. Unlike Blood Clone, which is not going to be super cool or super strong, although I do think the art's kind of neat. 3-mana double blood shadow spell. Discover a 5-cost minion and then spend 5 corpses to summon a copy of it, which I think is just not remotely good, honestly. Like Discover does help because you can get more reliable bodies out of it, but when you look at like the Death Knight pool in particular, there's actually nothing very good. Sort of Hollow Direhorn and Reanimated Pterodax have some utility, I think, with a rush aspect, but the rest of it sort of sucks. And then like obviously there's also neutral, but you know, neutral's gonna have an even worse pool because like it's just a bunch of random stats and stuff. It's not cards that usually, you know, synergize super well. Like occasionally you'll get a Blobatar, but sometimes you'll just get like, you know, Crater Experiment and Clockwork Rager and Aeon Wizard, and you'll be like, what? This sucks. This sucks both on board and in hand, right? So it's just like, I don't know. And then 5 corpses just feels expensive to get the copy, because otherwise this is just a totally dead card just sitting here like an idiot. And you got to spend 5 corpses, particularly on turn 3. You're never going to have 5 corpses. So it's not like you're cheating out a 5-drop early. This is something that's happening way later in the game. I just think this card looks terrible. I think this could be 6-cost minions. I think this could be like 2 corpses or 3 corpses. I think it's going to be 2 mana. Like, I think there's a lot of ways you can make this card feel just remotely, not even, I'm not sure any of those would make it good, but it'd be like remotely considerable. As it stands right now, I just think this is really, really bad. So moving on over to Paladin with the Scarlet Bruiser. She's a 2-mana 2/2. Death Rattle, if your deck has no neutral cards, get a random Paladin card. It costs 2 less, which we did see the kind of tease of Pure Paladin with the legendary that got revealed previously, Vama, Looming Death. And here indeed, we're going to see some actual Pure Paladin cards today, and some others that are kind of Pure Paladin encouraging or adjacent. So if you commit to Pure Paladin here, you get a randomly generated Paladin card that costs 2 less, which I think that's an okay payoff. You know, it is delayed, which is a little tough sometimes, but you get a big Tyrion for 6 mana. Maybe you're not mad. A big Vama for 7. Maybe you're not mad. I think there are probably a lot of other results too, though, that are just like, oh, this is a weird synergy card that doesn't really fit with my deck at all. Or like some like random high cost spell that I just don't really need. And you start to ask yourself, well, it's like, well, that wasn't really worth the trouble, was it? I played a mediocre statted minion on 2, and this discount makes everything a little more competitive, sure, but there will still be cards that don't feel worth it. And it's like, well, that slot was a high premium. So this also kind of points you in a direction of like, what is this deck going to be about? Like, is a Pure Paladin an aggro deck? Is it a control deck? Is it like a value grinder deck? And we're going to see more cards, and I actually don't know that answer still. I think it has a hair of an identity crisis that maybe lends towards this kind of like generically mid-range thing that doesn't really scream strength to me. I think you'll see what I mean as we talk about more of these cards. Like, in a total vacuum, this is fine, but you know, to play this, you have to commit to this game plan and give up potentially some like powerful neutral cards. And I don't know if that's going to be worth it necessarily for a card like this, where I think the payoff is just like pretty good. It's not, you know, crazy and maybe not even aligned well with what the deck might want to do. Next up is the Vigilant Sentry, a 3-mana 2/3 taunt with Battlecry. If your deck has no neutral cards, summon 2 Vigilant Sentries. So in total, that would be 3 2/3 taunts for 3 mana, which that's pretty good output. Like, that's a big pile of stuff. And the taunt side of this kind of makes you think, well, okay, this is maybe more of a defensive deck, but as we've seen with these cards so often in the past, these are usually actually used more by like aggressive decks to just give them a pile of stuff to hit you with, right? The taunt is sort of incidental and sometimes still relevant and helpful, but you know, I kind of see this like play this on turn 3, play my Shatter card on turn 4, and just like buff the crap out of these, right? Like, that's maybe a more appropriate line than an actual defensive line necessarily. So this kind of makes me think a hair more aggressive, but like, you know, if you look at those 2 cards together, right, like these don't necessarily like, they're not counter synergistic or anything. They just don't like point to the same direction to me either. They don't really scream like, okay, yeah, I see a game plan coming together. It's more just like, okay, these are independently playable cards that don't necessarily go anywhere. But I will say, like, I think this one is a much better payoff just because of the efficient stat output and potential aggression of it is much higher. But now we're going to move over to this card, Truth Seeker, a 7-mana weapon. It's a 3/3. After your hero attacks, give your paladin minions +2/+2, which is going to be only on board, for the record. No text about wherever they are or anything like that. So this is a board-based buff, which means you're going to equip this and spend an entire 7 mana and somehow hope to have a board, which I just like, that's just not happening, right? Like, how often are you actually going to have a board? Well, I mean, now you can spend 7 mana and then wait a turn and play your board afterwards, right? Like on turn 8, play a couple Vigilant Sentries to get your board built, and it's like, man, that's also crazy slow. I'm taking a pass turn on 7 into a board development on 8, like it, you know, with all these cards sitting in hand. So it's like, okay, now I'm like, this is definitely designed as a kind of mid-range deck, but even this is a card that's not fully paying off until turn 9 potentially, right? It's like, this is starting to look like a late game deck, but like stats like this, particularly stats that are only on board, don't really play well into the late game. Typically this sort of stuff falls off as other opponents are just doing game breaking, game winning sort of things, you know? It's like, oh, I developed this board, oh, they deathwing me, I'm dead, whatever. So it's like there's a big gap here basically from this stuff. Now, this is not specifically a pure paladin card, but it, you know, it only buffs paladin minions specifically. It's just kind of nudging or hinting at pure paladin, and like maybe Silverhand recruit stuff here lines up as well. But what I'm getting at is this just looks really weak to me, and it does not kind of go together with the other stuff. So next up here, we have Dalaran Champion, a 4-mana 3/3 Divine Shield Taunt. Whenever this gains stats, gain an extra +1/+1 wherever this is. So this can gain stats both in hand and in deck, or of course on board from your Truth Seeker. But just notably, like, the Truth Seeker does not buff anywhere except board. So it's weird that these cards came out together where it's like this one saying, hey, I want buffs everywhere. Sorry, I don't give buffs everywhere. You know, now maybe you couldn't give the 2/2, I don't know, but for 7 mana, I kind of think you could, for the record. So again, just like, it's just not like syncing up here for me. That doesn't necessarily make Dalaran Champion a bad card, though, because I still think there's some crazy plays with this, right? Play this with interned Nozdormu stuff, and it's like, oh my god, this is gaining even more stats from my Aura Nozdormu, and it's like popping off like crazy. I mean, just slamming a Divine Shield Taunt 3/3s also maybe not terrible sometimes. We've seen, you know, like Talon Fordring come down on turn 5 and feel kind of disruptive. You also have Divine Shield guy at 5 in Paladin, where it's like, if this sticks around for a moment, you know, this could become a really annoying body on board. So like, obviously the Divine Shield synergies are there. We've got hand buff stuff in Paladin that's always a possibility on top of that, so this +1/+1. Board buffs, of course, from stuff like Shatter is a possibility too. So like, this looks pretty good to me. I think this is a solid card. I don't actually know that any of those decks need this. In some ways it sort of feels like more of the same stuff. I don't know that this would really take a spot in an end of turn Paladin deck or not, but it's an option. Like, I think it's fine. Just again, it doesn't really sync up with the rest of these cards. And then our final Paladin card here is Judgment, a 6-mana prepare card. This one allows you to choose a friendly minion and then set all minion stats equal to that minion's. So there's a couple options here, right? Like, you can basically like debuff your opponent's stuff, like where you choose a Silverhand Recruit on your side of the board and your opponent had a bunch of Jade Golems or whatever, and they all become 1/1s because you have set them to your friendly minion stats. Alternatively, if you like prepare this and it's like, say, down to 0, whatever, super cheap, and maybe you have a board of Silverhand Recruits and you have a big dude, you could play the big dude and still have a 0-mana Judgment and set all of your Silverhand Recruit stats to the big dude's stats. So like playing 8/8 and it's like, boom, 5 Silverhand Recruits just became 8/8s and they now get to hit you in the face or whatever. So it's almost like this kind of crazy super bloodlust if you want it to be, or sort of an equality or something almost if you want it to be, or even better than equality because it's a full stat reset. So both removal and aggression are possible. Now, I will say, like, in the Silverhand world, having a board full of Silverhand Recruits that are like ready to attack using this as a bloodlust seems really hard to achieve. Like, what are the odds you have a bunch of 1/1s and you can play an 8/8 and turn them all into 8/8s and go face? Like, that's going to be really, really difficult to line up consistently. Just like, they just get swept up too easily, right? So that said, you might still be able to take a turn where you like summon a bunch of them and play a big dude and just get a board full of 8/8s, even if they can't attack. Although I still think at some point, you know, you've got like mana considerations there. What is the big guy? How is he fitting in? And you're summoning all these dudes. So I think you're often talking about kind of a 2-turn line where you have to spread that out over multiple turns, which is going to make it tough to use that way. Using this more as a removal card, or, you know, not removal, but, you know, debuff card, I guess, that does seem a lot more possible. Like that seems like that could hit, but then, you know, what deck is actually using that? Like, are we running a control Paladin that cares enough to do that, right? And is there some deck that can use this in both directions? Probably not. So this card has some neat applications. I just think it's one of those where I don't really know the deck fit or who's running this or why. I think it just could kind of get left out. Moving on over to Hunter, we have Arcane Tripwire, and a 3-mana arcane spell. Deal 5 damage split among all enemies, and then shuffle 2 spells into your deck that do it again when drawn, which I literally teased this yesterday. Did I have insider knowledge, or am I just a genius? I'll let you guys decide. I'll let all of you decide, because we talked about Ratcatcher that copies all spells in your deck, death rattle, draw 1. Now, if you're shuffling really high impact cast when drawn spells into your deck, Ratcatcher doubling up on all those spells becomes really cool, because, you know, these are kind of free draws. You just get free hits on this when you draw them. So you play 2 of these, you shuffle 4 of these Arcane Tripwire Cast When Drawns into your deck. You double those up with your Rat Catcher. You're talking about 8 of these in deck, each dealing 5 damage. Do the math, guys. That's 40 damage. That's 40 damage in your deck if you draw enough cards and draw through all these Arcane Tripwires, which is a lot. And like, yes, these can hit minions, but they also can hit face too, which means there's like a lot of lethality baked into this. If you can keep the game going long enough or draw enough cards, these become some really big problems, because they also will just like keep your opponent's board in check sometimes and, you know, eventually whittle them down and kill them. And spoiler alert, we're not done. We also have the Beast Tripwire, a 4-mana spell. Summon a random 5-cost beast. Shuffle 2 spells into your deck that do it again when drawn. Now, I like this one a little bit less because it's just kind of more passive board-based stuff. And of course, it is also just more expensive. But I imagine if you're committing to this package, you are probably just running both of these. I think this one's just a little bit less powerful, right? If you look at the 5-drop Beast pool, by the way, it is, you know, like always, it's a mixed bag, some good, some bad, right? The stuff like Crater Experiment's going to be kind of disappointing, some just like 5/5s or whatever. We actually saw some of these before, some rush minions, you know, like it's okay. Beast helps. It's better than just a generic 5-drop pool, because there are some better beasts on average, stuff like this, and this are actually pretty good sometimes. Some of these rush minions are fine. Stealth's kind of cool. So it's solid. It's actually decent. But I think it's ultimately a less high pressure card than the Arcane Tripwire. But I could still see both of these in a deck that's just running a bunch of cards. Now, you could do a world where you run only these 2 spells and use that as, you know, use your Rat Catcher's way to like tutor these out and duplicate specifically just these. There is a kind of timing consideration there, though, where like if you don't hit these early enough or have other ways to draw spells specifically, like does it all line up in time? Does it come online too late? How are you staying alive through all that? What does the rest of the deck look like? I definitely have some questions there, but I do think particularly Arcane Tripwire is like, you're going to have a moment where that feels safe to play, where it's like, I can just kind of weave this in. And I think the Beast Pool is decent enough for Beast Tripwire that you probably feel okay to play this one as well. It's just about that sticking around through the rest of the game that's a question. Now, that said, we are going to see some additional support cards here. For instance, the Smuggled Shovel, a new 1-mana 1/2 spell, Death Rattle draw spell that didn't start in your deck. So this is a great way to kind of preemptively load this up and make sure you can draw one of those Tripwire cards, which of course also that's a Cast When Drawn, so it's going to draw you another card as well. So basically this is like, hey, as soon as I play one of those, I'm just getting, you know, some kind of impact on board, minion or damage, and also getting a regular card, which makes this really nice. I think this is just super good. There is maybe a bit of a gap here where you're playing this on 1. If you attack on 1, you got to hold it until turn 3 at the, you know, earliest for your Arcane, maybe with coin on turn 2 or something, sure, but that's probably not a big problem. I don't think you mind. I'm just saying this could have maybe been, you know, like a 2-mana 2/2 to line up a bit better, but I think, you know, the cost flexibility here is great too. Just looks like a good piece of that. I don't know if there's other cards right now in Standard that play to this, but it's definitely one of those to keep an eye on. Like any, you know, even like you know, we have the big neutral legendary spell thing, right? The Dragon Soul card. I can't think of the name of it right now, but you guys know what I'm talking about. Dragon Soul Shattered. That's what it's called. You know, like even this, right? Like these did not start in your deck, so you could even use this to draw like a Dragon Soul Shattered. Is that going to be the good way to do it? No, I'm just saying there's other possibilities. So for the rest of Hunter here, we're going to get actually a bit of a Death Rattle package, kicking it off with the Black Market Overseer, a 1-mana 1/3. Whenever you play a Death Rattle minion, give it Rush, which that's cool. I mean, that's saw a little stat line here on a 1-drop. Some good like instant activation of your Death Rattles could be really powerful. I think sometimes you can play this down on turn 1 and lean into a turn 2 line like your Guard Dog, just to make sure this feels really good and immediately impactful. And it's cheap enough too that you can save it for later. Sometimes save this till turn 5 or 6 or whatever and play a few Death Rattle cards all at once so that you can use this as sort of a recovery tool, which sometimes Hunter does lack that ability to recover well. So I think this is actually super flexible and a great enabler for Death Rattle decks. So here's the Guard Dog, handsome fella, a 2-mana 3/1 beast with Death Rattle. Summon a random 1-cost Death Rattle minion, which is just a pile of stuff, potentially. A lot of those Death Rattle minions at 1 gonna generate value, sometimes leave stuff on board, right? Like just good little pile of cards. I mean, we'll just pull up Death Rattles. Why not? Let's do it. 1-cost Death Rattles. I'm very prepared, guys. Don't worry about it. Keywords, Death Rattle, right? Random means from any class. So, you know, just like good little stuff, right? You know, okay, concealing confection. Sure, now I get a weapon, right? Get a legendary. These are kind of the value generators. Glade Ecologist. You can say sorry, but I think you'd be okay with a 1/3, honestly. That'd be fine. Sizzling Cinder, great on board, right? Maybe some card draw if it hits. Raptor Nest, we know is good. Twilight Egg, great card in general. Maybe hard to activate sometimes, but, you know, still pretty interesting. So just like really, like all of these are actually pretty great. I don't see a single real whiff here. Maybe Fiendish Servant, but even that could have some impact on a 2/1. It's kind of aggressive. So it's a really good pool of stuff that's going to make you stuff. Also keep in mind, the interaction here is a bit interesting with Black Market. This is whenever you play a Death Rattle minion, so you're not going to be able to run that second one in because that's a summon, not a play. So you don't get like an instant chain off these two cards together, but still Guard Dog just looks good. Like generically great 2-drop Beast synergies, Death Rattle synergies. This just looks like a good card. Moving on to Underbelly Network, 2-mana location, summon a 2/1 rat with Death Rattle, draw a card. So this is basically Loot Hoarder ×2, which with Beast synergies, which I think is actually, again, pretty solid, man. Now, remind you again, this does not work with a 1-drop because that's play, not summon. But still, I think this is completely fine. I actually think you could even maybe run this in your spell deck too, because you just need ways to maybe draw cards without running spells, like just get a couple rats that help you find some of those tripwires even faster, right? Total possibility there. A lot of decks could just kind of use a 2-mana draw 2. Like, yes, it's all on a little bit of a delay, which isn't perfect, but you can load this up early, just get things moving, get some bodies on board out of it too. Like, it's just doing a lot of little things. Moving on to the 4-cost here, Dig for Freedom, a spell that gives a friendly minion Death Rattle, summon 2 random 4-cost minions, which is a pretty good pile of stuff. Random 4-cost when they're not beasts or anything. It's a sort of shaky pool, but 2 bodies for 4 mana is okay. I will also note we're going to see a card here that I think synergizes particularly well with this, the Sewer Swimmer. This one triggers a friendly minion's Death Rattle, which, you know, if you do stack Death Rattles on Death Rattles, you could have something like, you know, a rat, which, by the way, this is a great way to load up a minion on turn 4 so that you have a guaranteed hit for your Dig for Freedom. Load up a rat, and then, you know, you have your Sewer Swimmer at any given point, could hit all that stuff together, could give you 2 random 4-cost minions, could draw you a card, and you'd still have the base versions of those as well, right? Creating a little chain of bonuses here off of your Dig for Freedom. Now, that said, there are definitely instances where you could see this kind of getting stuck, where it's like, I just couldn't stick a minion, or it's so delayed. Like if you're playing this out with a 1-drop or a 2-drop later, it's like, oh god, dude, like it's gonna take a whole nother turn for these to die off and give me the random 4 costs. I think that delay could definitely hold this one back. Like if you're ahead and you're taking in trades, you're getting these 4-drops immediately, pretty solid card. But as soon as you fall behind, when you're playing this from a passive position, I think this card gets way worse, which might be what holds it back. So the Sewer Swimmer, as we said, is a 5-mana prepare card. It's a 5/4 beast, and prepare Battlecry, trigger a friendly minion's Death Rattle, which is cool, man. I think this is actually sort of playable on curve sometimes, even if you didn't find a moment to prepare it, like we talked about, that kind of turn 4 into a turn 5 play does make sense on this. But then also, if you have a big Death Rattle you're trying to hit later in the game, prepare this at any given moment preemptively, line it up to be that kind of 1-2 punch where you don't have to have that thing that's stuck on board. You can play them out together, which definitely helps. Sometimes those cards can get kind of stuck, and then that becomes a crazy threat with any big, scary, awesome late game bomb kind of Death Rattle as well, which gives this an extra angle. So I think between the two, like, being able to just sort of tempo this out, sometimes it'd be okay, not great, but okay is fine. And then like pop-offs is pretty cool. Prepare cards, they always have that consideration of like, when do I find a moment? But I think, you know, even just discounting this by like 3 on turn 2 or 4 on turn 3 or whatever, both of those give this a lot of flexibility to create some big moments. So I think this actually looks pretty good. And that wraps it up for this review. So let's go ahead and rate all these cards from 1 to 5 stars. Emergency Surgery is a 2-star card. Drink Blood is a 4-star card. Bone Flurry is a 4-star card. Corpse Cannon is a 4-star card. Tower of Ghouls is a 3-star card. Sawbones is a 5-star card. Blood Clone is a 1-star card. Scarlet Bruiser is a 3-star card. Vigilant Sentry is a 4-star card. Truth Seeker is a 2-star card. Dalaran Champion is a 3-star card. Judgment is a 2-star card. Arcane Tripwire is a 4-star card. Beast Tripwire is a 3-star card. Smuggled Shovel is a 4-star card. Black Market Overseer is a 4-star card. Guard Dog is a 4-star card. Underbelly Network is a 4-star card. Dig for Freedom is a 3-star card. Sewer Swimmer is a 4-star card. And Sewer Swimmer is a 4-star card. And yeah, there you go. Pretty good batch of cards today, I think. I like a lot of these. Some big misses in the mix, but overall, some stuff that just looks pretty good. A lot of cards you could just kind of see yourself going, yeah, I can play that. That works. That's got some good numbers on it. So share your thoughts on all these cards down below. We're getting honestly near the end of the review season, which is kind of crazy how fast this one went. But thanks as always for watching, and until next time, game on.